PBS Utah presents the Governor's Monthly News Conference, an exchange between Utah reporters and Governor Spencer Cox.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be with you again. It's great to see all of you. I know it's been a very busy month for those of you, especially those of you who are covering the legislature. Now, we usually start these press briefings with a COVID update. I'm going to forgo that today, and we'll let you know that we will be having a COVID press conference tomorrow morning with our public health officials to give an update on where we are with the virus and the pandemic and where we go from here. So we hope you'll attend. We hope you'll pay attention to that discussion tomorrow morning. I do want to begin, though, by just thanking members of the legislature who have been meeting. We're in the middle of the 45-day session. Actually, we're towards the end of the 45-day session, thankfully. We have about 2 weeks to go. I know how challenging it is for legislators and their families. It's been a great session so far. I'm assuming you have a few questions to ask about the session, and I'll be happy to answer those, and we might as well jump right in. So I'll open the floor for questions.
Governor, at this point, the bill to block vaccine proof of vaccination has made it out of committee. You yourself have said that private businesses have a right to require this if they want to. So is this bill cruising for a veto? Should it get through the legislature to your desk?
Thanks, Ben. So we will be talking a lot more about COVID tomorrow, as I mentioned. But as we see, case counts are dramatically dropping, hospitalizations are dramatically dropping. Omicron has been the most predictable variant of all the variants. It happens the same way in every state, in every country. It goes up quickly and it comes down quickly, just like we were expecting. We also see that we have done very well with vaccinations. There are still lots of people that we need to get vaccinated, but Utah is in a great space, and we're going to be in an even better space in the next week or two. And I'm ready to, I think most Americans, certainly most Utahns, are ready to move on from all of this debate and discussion that has been so divisive around the variant. I'm ready to be done with all COVID bills. We have passed many COVID bills in the past that have dealt with some of these very controversial issues. I feel like we're in a very good place in the state. I do think it's time for businesses to stop requiring vaccinations to get in. I was very pleased to see the Utah Jazz announce this past week that after, I think, February 25th, they will no longer be requiring vaccinations to get into the games. I would encourage all businesses to do that. I think that's where we need to be. It's concerning because you could actually have COVID and still get into these places because you had been vaccinated. And certainly with Omicron, we saw so many breakthrough cases. And so no longer is being vaccinated equivalent to not having COVID or not being able to spread COVID. And so I don't think they make sense in that way. But I'm certainly ready to be done with all of these bills. Again, one of the ways that the legislature can signal to Utahns that we're moving on from the pandemic phase of the virus is to not run any more bills around COVID. And so we're watching this one closely. We'll see where it goes. I hate mandates. I don't like government mandating that people get vaccinated. That's why we've sued the Biden administration successfully to prevent that from happening. I don't think we should be mandating, telling businesses and people what they need to do with regards to this epidemic. And if I'm being consistent, and I've said this before, that also means we shouldn't mandate businesses with their requirements. We already have an exception for employees. Every employee in this state already, we passed a law that I signed. They have the ability to opt out of any vaccine requirements. So we're really talking about businesses doing business and customers. I think the market will take care of that, and I suspect that over the next few weeks we'll see the few remaining vaccine requirements go away from businesses.
Governor, last year you were opposed to the transgender athlete bill. Yesterday you signaled that you have some optimism that you could get to a place where you might support it. What has to change in order for you to sign the bill?
So we're looking at this bill very closely, and I want to thank both sides of this issue. You'll remember when I signaled my opposition to it last year, that was a complete ban that we were talking about. And I said there has to be a better way, and I encouraged both sides to come together. And that's exactly what has happened. And both sides are saying that. If you look to Equality Utah and Troy Williams, he's talked about the sponsor of the bill, Representative Birkeland, how hard she has worked over the past year. I give her enormous credit in bringing people together to try to find a solution. They've also both said that they're very close, that this bill is close. It doesn't give everyone what they want, which probably means it's a good step in the right direction. We don't have support from both sides yet, but they're signaling that they're close. If there's maybe a couple changes that can be made, I don't want to poison that discussion in any way with anything I say here today, except to say that my team is also involved in those discussions, and I think we're close. I think we'll get a much better bill. I'm hopeful that we will get something where both Equality Utah and Representative Birkeland can come together and say, hey, we like this. It's not perfect, but it's better. It will protect women's sports, which is really important, but also allow many, if not all, of our students. And by the way, there's very, very few, if any, right now that are participating in sports, but will allow a path for that to happen. So this is a very different bill. This is unlike anything that has been passed or attempted anywhere in the country. And so I'm anxious and hopeful that we can get this issue off the table. Again, it's a very, very small issue. It gets blown out of proportion because you'll see an Olympic athlete or a college athlete somewhere who is dominating their sport. That's certainly not happened here in the state of Utah, but we're going to try to find a path forward.
So the two sides, Representative Birkeland and Equality Utah, must agree for you to support the bill.
No, that's not what I said. Okay. I'm hopeful that we can get to an agreement, but I will say we're much closer than we were before. We'll see what comes out of this. I'm keeping my mind open, and I know they are as well.
But as this bill is written right now, would you sign it?
It hasn't passed yet. It's close. That's all I can say right now is that it's close, and I'm hopeful we can get it across the finish line.
Republican governors in at least 10 states have signed bills to ban transgender athletes from girls' sports. Are those governors wrong?
So I mentioned this before when we talked about it last year, and that is that when I talk to our transgender students in the state, and I've encouraged our legislators to do as much, and again, Representative Birkeland has done this, and she deserves enormous credit for having these conversations, these very difficult conversations. And what I said is I'm more worried about their mental health. I'm more worried about the safety of these students right now. They're not in our state dominating sports. That's not an issue that we need to deal with. And so I rejected that last year. I do think there has to be a better way. I think we're close to that better way here. And if we're able to find something that works better and it helps here and it's a win for both sides, then I would encourage those governors to consider something like that.
Governor, your thoughts on the flyover over the Great Salt Lake? Why do that with lawmakers? What came of that?
Sure. Yeah, I've had multiple conversations with lawmakers who did the flyover. They were able to go and spend some time. We took some a couple days ago, and then this morning, the National Guard. I want to be very clear because for some reason this has gotten out there that this is costing enormous amounts of money. These are required training hours for the National Guard, so these are flights they would have to do anyway, and it makes sense to use those hours to help our legislators see the scope of the problem. I liken it to the first time I saw Delicate Arch or the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. I'd seen pictures of it my whole life, and you can say you know what Delicate Arch looks like, but when you see it the first time, it's breathtaking, it's overwhelming, it's incredible. There is no substitute to seeing it in person. And even those who are the biggest advocates for the Great Salt Lake were shocked shocked when they got up there and saw that bird's eye view of how dry it really is and how small the lake has gotten. No picture, no drone footage can do that, what they were able to see with their own eyes. And we've heard back from people who, thought this was somebody else's issue, who have said, wow, I had no idea, we need to do more, and I'm on the team. And so that the way that it galvanized people, the way that it unified people, I think was critically important, and I applaud the Speaker and the President for making that happen, going early in the morning before their committee meetings start, and giving them an opportunity to see firsthand what's happening out there.
The Speaker's bill was made public yesterday,
Yeah.
$40 million alone just for getting water to the Great Salt Lake, as well as watershed and habitat restoration. You have budgeted $50 million overall. Is this enough?
Well, it's a start, and the Speaker would tell you it's not enough. He will tell you it's a start as well, but it's an important start. And so I think he said, if I remember correctly, that he expects that there will be bills every session going forward on the Great Salt Lake, and I anticipate that as well. We'll be proposing some of those. We'll be working with legislators on others, and so it's a great start, and that's what we're doing, is to help to galvanize public opinion on this, help people understand why it's important. That takes time, but the steps we're taking now are the critical steps, and really laying the framework so that we can do more of this in the future. What that bill does, it's not just the $40 million that's important. It sets up a framework that allows additional dollars from nonprofits and private organizations to couple with the state dollars, and to help get water rights that will allow additional flow to come into the Great Salt Lake. So this is very exciting, and I think, again, combining the private sector and the nonprofit sector with the public sector makes our dollars go a lot farther. So it's not just $40 million. This will lead to hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars dedicated to this cause.
Governor, there is a provision, though, in this bill, and I'm just quoting right from the language, that you shall use no less than 25% of the grant money to protect and restore wetlands and habitats in the Great Salt Lake surrounding ecosystem to benefit the hydrology of the Great Salt Lake. 25% doesn't seem like very much. So why are you comfortable with this language?
Sure, yeah, I am comfortable with that, because, again, it does more than that. So this is about improving the wetlands. Other of that will go to actually buying the water rights that just come directly into the lake. So it's a huge start. It's something, honestly, a year ago I didn't know if we'd be able to get done. So to know that we have the Speaker running this bill, that's a really good sign for us. The Speaker doesn't run a lot of bills that fail, and so I'm excited about the direction we're headed.
What about the investments that this new entity would be able to make? So it sounds to me, just reading the bill, it sounds to me like this entity will be able to invest the money, and some of that may be state money.
Yes.
And to realize some sort of return that would be put back into this process.
Yeah.
You're good with that?
Yes. So what will happen is water rights will be purchased, and then that water will be dedicated to the Great Salt Lake. So water rights now are purchased to use in lots of different ways, right? Used in homes, used in developments, used in businesses, used in agriculture. But these particular water rights will then be dedicated directly to the Great Salt Lake. So they won't be used for anything except to replenish the Great Salt Lake and improve flows. Now, there are other bills out there that we're working on as well. This bill just came out yesterday, but we're very excited about this concept. It's a concept that's been around for a while, but we've never used state money for this type of idea, and I'm very pleased that it's getting so much support.
Does that not open the door to other entities then investing state money? I mean, my impression is that could be done in a myriad of different ways. Sure. And is that problematic?
No, it's not problematic. Again, it's a really good thing. And maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but we're going to move on to some other questions. It's not problematic at all. If we can invest state dollars in saving the Great Salt Lake, I'm going to do that. I think I've been pretty clear about that, and I don't see a problem with it at all.
So how do you feel about islands on on Utah Lake now?
Well, that's a whole other issue. Certainly, there are some proposals around that. There's a lot of concern that's coming. We're watching that that process very closely. We do need to do work on Utah Lake. There's no question. Utah Lake is a disaster right now. It's our most underutilized asset. It's our most underutilized resource. And every year we have major issues with Utah Lake. There has to be dredging, and it's incredibly expensive. And so the question is, how are we going to pay for saving Utah Lake and making that happen? This is a very novel idea, but again, there's a lot of pushback on that. A lot of environmental concerns. So we will look at those closely before any decisions are made. But everyone also agrees that something has to be done with Utah Lake. The controversy is over what and how to pay for it.
Governor, we've been asking a lot about certain bills, but for you this session, what needs to be voted on?
Oh, wow. Great question. So there are several things that are important. So water bills, as I've stated for several months now, there's a suite of bills that are going through, and they're in various stages of the process. They've all been voted on successfully in committees, in the House and the Senate. We just need those to move through. These are conservation issues that are important. Representative Spendlove is running some of those. We have some education bills that we're very passionate about. Senator Ann Milner has been running bills around an initiative, a third grade literacy and reading initiative that is very critical to our state. The optional all-day kindergarten as well, something that we're very excited about, giving parents that option, not mandatory, but optional, and being able to fund that and pay for it. So those are bills that we're working on, and then there's work going on around the price of housing in our state and the supply of housing in our state. And those negotiations are still occurring, but we really want to get those bills across the finish line.
Just double checking. So conservation, education, house supplies, you think those are the three biggest issues that need to be tackled this year?
I do. Yes, correct.
Governor, the UEA also mentioned those bills as their priorities, but President Heidi Matthews said that there's so much distraction on nonsense that they're not able to work on those. Are you worried at all about the prioritization of the legislature?
Sure. I wish they would let me prioritize the legislative bills that are out there, but that's not how it works. And it's called sausage making for a reason. It's very messy. Every legislator has a right and an opportunity to they feel their bill is important. They have a group of constituents that feel their bills are important, and so the messy stuff is part of the process too. But I always ask people to judge the legislative session not by what is proposed or what is debated, but what ultimately ends up passing and is signed into law. And so, yeah, there are some messy ones out there. I mean, you specifically mentioned teachers, and there are some bills out there that are controversial, and I just want to say to our teachers and the things they're worried about. There are some good ones here, as you mentioned, that they're very supportive of. Some that they're not supportive of. I want to make sure that we are taking care of our teachers. We're very proud of the fact that Utah was one of the first states to return to in-person learning. We now realize, I think we realized it earlier than many other states, how critical that is. Now we have Democratic governors who sound like Republican governors who are demanding that kids have in-person education. And we did that here. One of the first states. We don't have the same education loss and gaps that other states have because we opened schools. And sometimes as politicians, we kind of pat ourselves on the back for that we made this happen. We did not make that happen. Teachers made that happen. Teachers were the ones that bore the brunt of making sure our schools were open. Teachers were the ones who allowed for in-person learning to happen. Teachers are the ones that prevented that gap, that learning gap that we're seeing in other states from happening here, although there's certainly some of that here. And teachers, like many other professionals right now, are not feeling great. They're struggling. It's been a long 2 years. It's been a difficult 2 years. We had a teacher shortage before the pandemic. I seriously worry. I hear so many teachers saying, you know what, I'm tired. I've had it. I want to move on to something else. And so that concerns me. And so there are lots of bills out there that seem to be kind of pummeling or piling on with our teachers right now. And I just hope the legislature will be very careful and very cautious in the way they message those bills as they're looking for compromises or ways to move those bills forward, that they will do so in a way that is respectful of our teachers, and that we're doing our very best to take care of our teachers and make sure they're okay.
What are your thoughts on the voucher bill, the Hope Scholarship bill then?
Yeah, so a good point. So the question is about the voucher bill, the Hope Scholarship bill. I am an advocate for choice. I'm a huge believer in choice, and I think that that parents should be able to use taxpayer money in other ways. We have an incredible charter system of schools here in our state. We have more choice than we've ever had before, and I think that's good. I think that's positive, and at some point, I will be absolutely willing to support vouchers, but that point is not now. Because we are underfunding our schools. You can't take money that could go to our schools and allow it to go to private schools when you're not fully funding the education system in our state. The average starting salary for a teacher right now in Utah is $43,000. That's actually a significant improvement, and it tells you how far we have to go. And so I think the average pay, not an average starting pay, average pay for a teacher in the state is north of $50,000, maybe $53,000, somewhere around there. And so with the price of housing, with inflation happening right now, I don't want to live in a state where teachers can't buy a home. That's not okay. And so, when teachers are making $60,000 a year to start, I will fully support vouchers. I'm all in on vouchers. But we have a long way to go before we get there. I want to get there. I believe in vouchers. I can't wait to get there, but now is not the time. So let's get our starting teacher pay at $60,000, and then let's do vouchers.
So will you veto it if it gets to your desk?
Yeah, I would.
Governor, what about other jobs in the state? You've been sticking up for teachers and education, but we know great resignation's been going on.
Sure.
A lot of people, claim they're underpaid, and they might be. I know you said you want teachers to be able to afford a house. What about other industries and businesses throughout Utah?
Well, that's the beauty of markets, right? So we are seeing, unfortunately, inflation. Inflation higher than we've seen since I was, 5 years old. I think that's how long it's been since we've seen inflation like this. And certainly some of the monetary policies of the federal government are causing that. It's unfortunate. However, I believe in markets, and markets work, and that's why we're seeing so much of the Great Resignation. Is that people need to make more, and they're demanding to make more. And again, our unemployment's 1.9%. That's a great problem to have, but it is still a problem. It's the lowest in our state's history, second lowest in the nation. And by the way, I will also tell you, is we've talked to our economists. There's this kind of theory out there that there's a lot of people not participating in the workforce right now. That is true in many other states. It is not that true in Utah. We've gone back over the past 25 years. We looked at our highest workforce participation rate in the last during this century, and what we found was that we are very close to our highest participation rate when you adjust for age. So you have to stratify by age. In the early 2000s, when we saw our highest participation rate, we were younger then. So you're going to have more people who are retired now because we're a little older than we were back then as a population. But when you adjust for age, and this was over a month ago, we were only down about 10,000 people from what would be our highest participation rate ever. So that's 10,000 people. That can make a difference for sure, but it's not a huge number like most people expect. So what you're seeing is industry, they are raising their salaries for people. That's the way the market works, and that's okay. That's a good thing for people. Now, government also, though, has to participate in the labor force, right? We have over 20,000 employees here in the state of Utah, and so we have to be able to match that. That Great Resignation isn't just happening in private industry; it's happening in the public sector as well. And so we have several several jobs that are well under market in our state. We did a statewide survey of every job, and we were able to find the places where we had the biggest gaps versus market rate. We've supplied those numbers to the legislature, and we've asked them to help us get people back to where they are, so that we're at least competitive with market. We will never be at or above market, but we need to at least be competitive with market, and that will allow employees to stay here and to do the things that they want to do, to be able to buy homes and raise families, and so we're expecting significant raises for many, if not most, of our employees this year.
Governor, what's your stance on Representative Phil Lyman's bill that would change Utah's mail-in voting system?
Well, both the Lieutenant Governor and I have been very clear on these issues for a long time. I mentioned it in my State of the State address that we're very proud of the record that we have in Utah when it comes to voting and secure voting. So I agree that we have to make sure our elections are secure. As a Lieutenant Governor overseeing elections for 7.5 years, every year we supported legislation that improved the security. We learn every year. Every election, we get together with the clerks, 29 clerks who actually run elections in our state. We oversee it, they run it. And we find out what worked, where they had some struggles, and then we encourage legislators to run bills to fix those problems. There is another bill this year. It's Representative Hawkins' bill. It was substituted out and passed yesterday or the day before. And it has the blessing of the Lieutenant Governor and all of the clerks. It improves and enhances security for elections in our state. But voting is a constitutional right, and I'm not in favor of bills that make constitutional rights harder. We should be proud of the way we do elections in this state. We are a model for the nation, and we believe that will continue. And so we don't support that bill, but we do support Representative Hawkins' bill and the changes that are involved there.
Okay, that's all the time that we have for our television broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us for the Governor's monthly news conference. Okay, and we're going to continue with streaming the conference, and I would like to introduce Corrine. She's a student at Judge Memorial High. She's part of our PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. So Corrine, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. So pardon me if you've already mentioned this, but you said that $40 million is going towards increasing flow into the Great Salt Lake. We've not necessarily had an amazing year regarding snowpack, and ultimately that feeds a lot of the Great Salt Lake. So there's not going to be necessarily going to be extra water. So you may have to buy other people's water claims. If they're not willing to sell their claims, where is the extra flow going to come from? And at some point, will the state need to reconsider some of the established water claims on the Bear and Jordan River, and or stop any future claims on water rights to protect the state's claims?
Thanks, Corrine. That's a very good question. So yes, we do know that there are people out there that are willing to sell their water rights. We've had some of those conversations. They're ongoing, but we feel very confident that there will be a very large amount of water claims that will be sold, or and many of them at reduced prices. Some of them will even be donated to allow this to happen. We've talked to some very big users, and they're interested in this as well. That's one of the reasons that this bill is moving forward. So I'm not worried about that piece of it. Certainly, when it comes to drought and where we're going, we have to keep looking at this. I do not foresee a day where we will take people's water rights away from them. That's not how we do things in the state of Utah. That's never where we're going. But we certainly need to look at what is going to happen additionally on those rivers and tributaries. What does that look like as we continue to grow? And part of that is this conservation piece as well, right? If we can reduce per capita water use and do that in homes. If we can do that with agriculture, we have another bill out there that will help significantly reduce the amount of water that agriculture is using and still get the same yields. Then we can have more growth in those areas. But if we can't, then the future of that growth and new claims moving forward will certainly have to be examined.
Do you think the legislator will be willing to put restrictions on the amount of water per household? Do you think they'll? be open to that idea?
So what we're seeing now, and what some of these bills that we're running now, first of all, is to have the state use less water. So we're one of the big water users, and so we'll have reductions placed on us on how we use water and have to be more efficient. So that's the first. That one's definitely going to happen. We're also going to stop park strips and unnecessary water usage. Allow more of that to happen in municipalities. There are some places now where it's required you can only have grass. You can't even do a water-wise landscape if you want to. So we're trying to remove some of those things and then see how far that takes us. One of the things I'm really proud of is that when we asked Utahns to use less, they did. We saved billions and billions of gallons of water last year. And so I believe that this is a first step. The secondary water metering is another one that's really important. Getting those water meters on those connections has, on average, about a 20% reduction just by metering it, not even charging more, just so people can see how much they're using. That has a significant decrease in water usage. So what we'll do, and what we do every year, is we will look at where we are, we'll look at what happened, how successful these were, and then if we have to take another step, we will. And usually we do that. We try to do that in a positive way, right? By rewarding people for using less instead of punishing people for using less. But certainly we have to look at the true cost of water. That's also another. If we're subsidizing water usage, then we're incentivizing the wrong thing, right? So that's another thing that is certainly on the table. Some municipalities are looking at this already: the true cost of water and the true cost of growth. We do have every year, almost every year, especially in dry years, we do have some municipalities who don't issue building permits because they don't have enough water. And so those are done on an individual basis, and but we give them the data and help them through those decisions. And so all of those things will occur. Hopefully, you're right, we haven't had a great water year. December was awesome. January was terrible. February has not been great. We are seeing a little bit of a change. We were able to get some yesterday. But if we have anything less than an average year, we will be in as dire a position as we were last year.
Okay, I'd like to go to a remote reporter for a question. Sonia with KUER, go ahead with your question for the governor.
Hi, Governor. Wanted to briefly go back to the discussion we were having about some of the education bills. You talked a lot during your campaign about wanting to reduce the burden, the regulatory burden on teachers, and just let teachers do what they do best, which is teach. What are your thoughts on some of these curriculum transparency bills that we're seeing?
Sure. Thank you for that question. So I think it's important to state that there seems to be this fight happening nationally between parents and teachers, right, or parents and schools. If there's one thing I lament the most about where we are right now in our national politics, it's that all politics is national. So if something happens in Virginia, everyone assumes it's happening here. I think that's a huge mistake. And I want to be very clear at this. Parents absolutely have the right, it's foundational, to be involved in their child's education. There is no question about that, which is why we do have choice and why I support choice. And so we have to make sure that parents are engaged. For years and years and years, for my entire life, what I've heard from teachers is they want parents to be more involved in their child's education. That's not controversial. That's just a fact. Every teacher I've ever known has said, man, I wish, we go to parent-teacher conference or have a conversation with a teacher, and they say things like, hey, I wish every child was as engaged, or every parent was engaged in their child's education as your family is. That's positive. We should be finding ways to make it easier for parents to know what's being taught and to be able to have those conversations with their children. By the way, that's the best way to do it. Good parents talk to their kids every night and ask them what they learn in school. And then we have a conversation about it. That's what we've done in my family. It's what I encourage families to do. So there's nothing inherently wrong with teachers letting families and parents know. I did this in college. I had many high school, even some middle school teachers who did this. We would have a syllabus on kind of what we were going to learn that year. That's fairly easy. It's not a huge burden. At least it doesn't have to be be a huge burden. Now, the details matter, right? And so some of that legislation can be a huge burden. And I'm very hopeful that we can find a space where it allows for more parental involvement in their child's education without overly burdening our teachers for the reasons that I already mentioned. So I'm watching carefully. I do have concerns. I know there's been changes made to those bills. I'm not sure where they are right now. I've been working on some other issues, but that's certainly one that we will take a close look at as they move towards the finish line and if they get to my desk.
Chris Reed with St. George News, go ahead with your question.
Good morning, Governor. And getting back to the Great Salt Lake and drought issue, from a southern Utah perspective, you mentioned about municipalities having to put moratoriums on growth, and that's certainly the case down here. We're also seeing the Department of Interior saying that Lake Powell may get so low it might affect electricity in terms of the fact that the turbines won't have water to turn. So with that in mind, what do you tell people down here to justify diverting water into the Great Salt Lake, which may not necessarily bring water to the taps down here at the same time as trying to mitigate drought efforts down here? Is it possible to do both?
Sure. Yeah, Chris, thank you. It absolutely is possible to do both. And of course, we're talking about a little different watersheds and the way that water flows and how it gets down to southern Utah. But this is critical, and it's critical everywhere, and probably even more critical in southern Utah, where we are seeing tremendous growth and those pressures are coming. But this is not an either or proposition at all. There are just so many things we can do. We've been blessed historically with a surplus of water. And that's not because of the geography of Utah. It's because of wise decisions that were made many years ago before all of us were here that have allowed us to have a surplus of water as we've been growing as a state. Now we're to the place where we don't have that surplus of water, combined with, of course, the weather patterns and what is happening out there. You may have seen there were some articles this week, a study that was done, I believe, coming out of California, that in the West, this is the worst drought in 1,200 years. You heard that correctly. Since the year 800 AD, that was the last time we had a 20-year drought that was this bad. So I don't know what was happening back in 800 AD that made it the case, but certainly I know where we are now. So when you're facing, and I think that's part of what maybe is difficult for people to comprehend, right? We're struggling understanding a once in 100 years pandemic. You layer on top of that a once in a 1,200 year drought. That's difficult for any of us to really comprehend, but it is serious. And so there's so much more that we can do. Every single one of us plays a role in this. There's much more that the federal government can do. We're working with them with our watershed restoration projects. We have these invasive species of plant and trees that suck water out of the land, and they're drying up our rivers and streams just as much as the drought is. And so making sure that we change those riparian areas, get them back to the native species that use much less water, and that will allow more water to flow into streams and rivers. We have to have more storage as well. That's part of this. The reason we have a surplus of water is that people were smart and they knew we had to store water, and so they did, and we've stopped doing that as a country. So it has to be an all of the above approach, and it has to be an everywhere approach too, not just northern Utah versus southern Utah. We're all in this together.
Sean with the Spectrum, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Governor. I wanted to ask about the recent announcement that several companies would boycott the Outdoor Retailers Expo if it moved back to Utah over the state government's stance on federal land and national monuments. And do you expect the state to change its position on, federal lands and specifically like the Bears Ears National Monument?
Well, thank you for the question. So just a little bit of background. Several years ago, the Outdoor Retailer Show was here in Salt Lake, and every year we had an amazing relationship with the Outdoor Retailer Show. They had a seat at the table. They were here. They met with Governor Herbert. I was then Lieutenant Governor. We met every year. We talked through those issues. They did have some success in influencing some of the policy with the legislature, making some changes with Salt Lake City and some of the requests that that they made. We became the first state in the nation with an outdoor recreation office, something that many states have copied now. That was a direct result of conversations that we had with the outdoor retailers and their show. And then they decided that they were going to use that as leverage, and that they threatened to move to another state. Ultimately, they ended up moving to Colorado, and we were told that that would be the end of the world, that our economy would crash, that it would, businesses would never move here, that it would be awful for our state. And turns out none of that happened. We have the best economy in the nation. Our outdoor industry, our outdoor retailer industry is thriving. It's stronger than it's ever been before, which is, by the way, one of the reasons they're trying to move it back here is because our outdoor retailers have been so dominant, and we have so many that have located here even after they moved the show, and it's been incredibly successful. By the way, we have lots of other outdoor retail shows here. We have several. We just had the big hunting expo here. 60,000 people were here. The truth is, they threatened to leave, and we didn't miss them. So we would love them to come back. I've had these conversations directly with them. We desperately want them to come back. And it's really interesting, this threat of a boycott. Look, I know where we live today. I know what the world is like today. People care much more about getting social media likes and saying we stood up to the governor of Utah or whatever they're trying to do here. But I sincerely mean this, we did not miss them at all. And so I'm hopeful they come back. I think it would be great to have them come back, but they're hurting their own cause. And I think that's what they really don't realize, because they gave up their seat at the table. I can't tell you, the very people who first threatened to move this came back to me after they decided to move and apologized. They said, this was not what we were intending. We were just trying to use this as leverage. We never really wanted to move it. And now it moved, and we feel terrible. And so that seat at the table is gone. If Patagonia and these other companies really care about this issue, they would want to be here to have this discussion, not go somewhere where everyone thinks exactly like them. But I can tell you that threat of boycott will do absolutely nothing to change any policy that's happening here in the state of Utah. Not even an inch. We won't give it another thought. In fact, the people that Patagonia and others hate the most really don't want them back. They're excited. They're saying, don't bring them back. This is great. And so I don't think that's good for their cause either. I don't think it's good. I think the best thing would be, what makes sense on paper, and clearly coming back to Salt Lake makes sense. That's why so many are pushing for it. It makes sense to them from a revenue standpoint. It makes sense from an ease standpoint. It makes sense from an access standpoint. Our airport's closer. Our venues are less expensive. Our outdoors are much closer. They can actually do the things that they care about, and then come back and join the discussion. You can help make a difference. You really can have influence. You can help to temper some of the things that are happening. We can find common ground. We've been able to do that with many other industries. They may not agree with everything, but I think there are some things that we definitely agree on. We are very proud of our outdoor industry, and this notion that we don't care about the outdoors because we have a disagreement with the Biden administration over the way that they are mandating these 1 million acre national parks and not giving any resources to help protect the very things that, not national parks, excuse me, national monuments. The very things they claim they want to protect are being destroyed because they haven't given any funding, and people are coming here from all over the world and destroying the very things that these monuments were meant to protect. Come back and have that conversation. We would love to have you. It would be amazing. Or don't. Whatever. It's fine.
Okay, one last reporter on Skype. We have Amy with Utah Public Radio.
Hi, Governor Cox. So there's been a lot of legislation this session about water, and we've talked about water ad nauseum, today. But I'm just curious, is there any legislation you're particularly excited about, or you think will be particularly effective? And do you see any gaps in legislation that could be filled to address the lake's needs or the water needs of Utahns?
Yeah, so certainly there will need to be more. We're working on the science side of this as well. By the way, this is not a phenomenon happening just here in Utah. These types of saltwater lakes have been drying up all over the world for a significant amount of time. So there are still questions that need to be answered about hydrology and the best way to help preserve these incredible resources and ecosystems that matter here. And so certainly there are some gaps. We're not done there. Again, we're going to need more funding in the future as we get better answers and as we kind of choose from, here are 10 options, which will give us the best return, the quickest. So some of that will still have to happen. What I'm most excited about, though, is that we're having this conversation and how serious people are taking this. And legislators, again, I had people get off that plane that said, I had no idea it was this bad, and I'm all in. So that excites me, and that will allow us to fix some of these things moving forward. I've already mentioned, I think, a couple of the bills that we're most excited about. The secondary water metering is a huge and very expensive change to our state, something that we've been needing to do for a long time, something that some water districts have been able to do, but the majority of them have not, just because it's so very expensive and the infrastructure is outdated. So using some of these ARPA dollars, the American Rescue Plan dollars that came to the state, as well as looking at infrastructure dollars that are coming from the new infrastructure bill that was recently passed by Congress. We don't have that funding yet. Seeing how we can use that as well to improve and enhance our infrastructure. But the other one that I'm really excited about is the funding with a program that we started last year or 2 years ago that is helping farmers use less water and use the newest and best technology, helping them be able to invest in that technology, because that's where we can really see significant reductions in water use across the state and still make sure that we're growing food. I mean, it takes water to grow food. We know that. It's so important to our state, and I want to make sure that we're protecting our ag industry, but also helping them to use less water. And that's where I think we can make some really significant jumps, and the legislature agrees, and so we're very hopeful we'll be able to get that money into those programs.
Governor, a massive work permit renewal backlog is threatening to put immigrants out of work, while some already have lost their jobs, including thousands here in Utah. People can't even renew their driver's license without the permits. This delay is affecting everyone from asylum seekers to DACA beneficiaries. Will you support local organizations that are planning to pressure federal government to resolve this issue with USCIS?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, we have to solve those federal backlogs. That's really important. I was in, some of you know, I was in Washington, D.C. just a couple weeks ago, had an opportunity to meet with my fellow governors. I didn't get that opportunity last year because of COVID, so this was my first time as a governor, as one of two new governors, actually three now with Virginia's new governor since last year, to come together and talk about some of these issues. And immigration was one of the issues that we did talk about. In fact, I had an opportunity. When I met with the president and vice president to ask the first question of them, and it was a question around immigration. And it's amazing to me that this is one of the most controversial issues that Republicans and Democrats actually agree on. It's the politicians who don't. Democrats agree that we need to secure the border, and Republicans agree that we need to fix immigration, legal immigration, and make it easier. Just fix all of the issues that are the backlogs are part of that. I sent a bipartisan letter. We initiated it, had Republican and Democratic governors from all across the country that we sent to the administration asking for help with J-1 visas and other visas that have allowed workers from other places to come. That's part of the labor shortage that we're facing right now. We, especially at some of our recreation areas in the state, at our ski resorts and in southern Utah, there's a significant need for those workers to come in, and we've used them very successfully in the past. And so to have again Republicans and Democrats agree on these issues and fixing those backlogs is one of them.
Governor, can I ask about liquor legislation? Excuse me. The omnibus liquor bill is advancing. It removes half of these popular hard seltzers from grocery and convenience stores, sends them back to the DABC, grants no new bar licenses, something that I know that your administration has pushed to have more of. So how do you feel about this bill?
Well, it's there are some good things in the bill, some bad things in the bill, I think, but these are always big discussions. They happen during the course of the year, trying to find that the right balance in getting there. Yes, we would like to see some more of those licenses. They're not included in the bill. As governor, I don't have the ability to write into legislation. I can only veto legislation, and so we won't be vetoing this. It's still not through the process yet. There's a potential. I know there's discussions about some potential changes happening in there. I don't know if they will or not, but it's I'm not 100% happy, but I'm not 100% upset with it either. So I think we're in a decent spot.
Governor, your thoughts on the film incentives bill that's making its way through, and we've heard news that Kevin Costner is looking at Utah for 5 movies if that bill passes. Your thoughts on that? Would you sign it? I know you've talked before about how you're not a fan of film incentives.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of incentives in general. I wish that every state got rid of all of their incentives and we just competed on the basis of our labor, our workforce, our policies, our tax policies, all of those different things. Because if we did that, Utah would win all the time, and we are winning all the time. And so I don't like incentives for our business incentives. I don't like those tax incentives. I don't like the film incentives. I hate all of them. That being said, I'm also a realist, and I know that other states do have these incentives, and so we have to, at some level, be able to compete with these other states. We've been able to do that in the past with a much smaller incentive. There's a reason New Mexico has giant incentives. It's because their economy is not nearly as strong as our economy, and so we don't have to be as big with our incentives or as crazy with our incentives. That being said, I do worry about our rural areas. That is one area where there is a need for jobs, where there is a need for investment, and so where there's an opportunity to bring some sort of economic development to rural Utah, I'm always open and willing to look at that. But you have to weigh everything, and this is hard. This is what the legislature does. I submit a budget; it's a recommendation, but they are the ones that actually have to figure out the budget. And so if you're putting more money in that incentive, what are you taking it away from? And can you get a better return somewhere else? That's the question is, and historically, when we've looked at the numbers, the actual return for taxpayer investment on these incentives is very small. It's much smaller than in other areas. That's why I haven't supported it in the past. That's why I didn't support the increases last year. And so we will look at this one. We will look at the numbers. We will look at the return. And if it makes it all the way through, I'll make a decision when it gets to my desk.
All right. Sounds good. We are close to out of time. You got 5 minutes back. We usually fill the whole time. So thank you for answering all of our questions and being here today.
Well, I'll waste more time next time.
You want to address just to have a little more fun.
That's totally fine.
Jazz are coming up on the All-Star break. We know you love the Jazz. What do you think about where they're at in the NBA standings?
Well, if you asked me this yesterday, I would have had a much happier answer for you. But obviously, last night was not a fun loss. It wasn't great. But I really like this team. I really do. We haven't seen them all together for quite a while. We've had so many injuries and so many issues. Shout out to Joe and Renee Ingles. I know they're off, I think, on a little vacation right now, hopefully before surgery, and really sad to have him traded. We're all hopeful that we can get him back, but I still love this team, and I think that the time off for some of these guys was really good for our young players. I love the what we're seeing with Forrest and Doak and those guys. It's really impressive. I think they're going to be able to help us down the stretch. I'm still very bullish on this team. I really like our chances when we're all healthy and playing together. I think we're as good as any team out there. So yeah, I'm the eternal optimist. Every year is our year, and I'm more convinced than ever that this is our year.
Governor, what are your thoughts about the death of the candy bomber?
Yeah, thank you. So I had an opportunity to meet Gail Halverson on many occasions. I consider him a friend, and I don't know if there are any better human beings anywhere on this planet. And it's sad in so many ways. Gail was 101 years old. I was last with him a few months ago at the University of Utah. I believe it was a Veterans Day event that we were at together, and it was incredible to see him. Every time the flag came out, or every time there was an opportunity to salute, he was in a wheelchair, could barely get up, and he was getting up. There was no way he was not going to stand up and salute, even if he couldn't raise his hand all the way to his forehead. He had two people that would run and jump and help him out of that wheelchair so he could salute. He and I spent a few minutes talking to each other, and he would tell you that he lived an amazing life, 101 years of pure joy and bringing joy to others. I thought it was very appropriate that I learned that he had passed away last night, but they asked us not to share it with anyone because his family members needed to be notified. So we couldn't say anything last night. And the first thing I saw publicly, maybe it was out elsewhere, but it was from the German embassy. And I thought it was incredibly appropriate that it was the Germans who recognized him first, and how much they love him still at a time of incredible darkness. And we're seeing some of those dark clouds again gathering in Europe, that he was able to bring joy to so many. And he brought joy for the rest of his life. He brought joy to me and to Utahns and people across the world. And so my heart goes out to his family. I know he's happy right now. I know he's up there handing out candy behind the pearly gates somewhere. So he's in good shape. I don't worry about him, but I hope that we can use his example, and I'll be better people because of it. Thank you for your time. Good luck. Hang in there the last couple of weeks of the session. Hopefully we'll all survive. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.